Hello and aloha and welcome to History 241, Civilizations of Asia, and especially to session 20, which deals with the Song Dynasty from about 960 AD to 1279 AD. My name is Abdul Karim Khan. I teach here at Leeward Community College, and please go to WebCT and check out the schedule of sessions, and particularly if any assignments are due. And also please note down my email address and the phone number and call me anytime you want to, and I'll try my best to get to you as soon as I can. Today we will be talking about the Song Dynasty in session 20. And before we do that, let's go and see what was there in the review, what we did in the previous session. So as a review, last time we talked about the end of the three kingdoms and the unification of China by the Sui dynasty. So that we would see we again repeated and repeated. Then the Sui dynasty got into wars against Korea, and that just took care of the Sui dynasty and ended the Sui dynasty, which was followed by the rise of the Tang dynasty, the most celebrated dynasty in the history of China or ancient China, the Tang dynasty. Then after the Tang dynasty, the barbarian invasions, and of course, another trouble, another problem for the Chinese to deal with, especially the barbarian invasions, and then the end of the Tang as a dynasty, but the Tang culture continued. So you would see here, especially in today's session, that there would be a succession of emperors, kings coming and going, but the civilization, the culture, the dynasty, or its values, they would stay with the Chinese forever. So do not be so much disturbed by the coming and going of the emperors, as long as you follow the trends and the pattern in the history of China. That is more important, and you would be fine. So here again, as a sort of not warning but sort of advice, please pay attention more to the trends, the patterns of the rise and fall of the dynasties, not particularly of any one special king or for that reason empress. So keep the trends, the pattern and design in the Chinese history, how they rise and fall. So let's go to today's presentation, and by way of introduction, what we have. Today we would talk about how China became divided after the Tang dynasty, and how China was again unified by the Song dynasty. So the Tang dynasty was followed by the Song dynasty. Then the old barbarians, they struck again and again these invasions. As the Song would rule, these invasions would continue and would finish the Song dynasty. Now the Song dynasty, as I would explain it later, is divided into two sections or two phases, the Northern Song and the Southern Song. So the Northern Song was the first to be wiped out by the northern barbarians, and then started the Southern Song because they moved the capital and settled in the south of China. So there they stayed, and for a while they continued their culture, they continued the life, but pretty soon again the Mongols came and took over almost entire China, and that put an end to officially the end of the Song dynasty. So that's how dynasty being established. It would rule for about 200 years, some of them 300 years or even more, and then someone from outside would come and wash everything of the dynasty. Not everything of the culture, but the dynasty itself, and another dynasty would rise. And this is, you might remember from the previous sessions, this is called the dynastic cycle. Dynasty following another dynasty. So one dynasty goes up, it stays for a while, it rules, and it rules magnificently, and it rules forever, 300 years, 400 years, and then it would go down, something would happen, and that something would be either internal problems, because the kings or the emperors, they would become, lazy, or they would ignore, taking care of the people. So they would not be as dutiful as they used to be, or their forefathers. So as when you see this sort of decline in the morality of the kings, that decline would become the decline of the kingdom itself. So the dynasty would go down. Another dynasty, I mean, there would be problems in between the transition, and then another dynasty would go up and stay for some time, for 100 years, maybe 200, 300, and then that would go down. So this is called the history of China in the cycles of dynasties, one dynasty following another dynasty. So let's see here. The Tang dynasty went down and the rise of the Song dynasty in the presentation. Between the Tang and the Song, the Tang and Song transitional period, that was full of problems. And so China was ruled by these very powerful Tang military governors and military commanders that are called Jiedushi. Jiedushi, these were very powerful people. They could establish even their own dynasties. You know, they were so powerful because they had everything that they needed to establish their dynasties. So these Jiedushis, the powerful military governors or commanders, they turned warlords in their provinces. When we say warlords, by that, what it means, they became like petty kings, but they had a lot of army, so they could fight against others and stay in business. They also established their short-lived dynasties and petty kingdoms. So that's why, you know, these Jiedushis more important in the history of China compared to someone who comes from outside and creates a trouble or problem, because these were Chinese. And so these were the source of internal decay, internal problems, internal chaos, internal bloodshed. And that's why so many, you know, Chinese perished in the process of the invasion, mutual invasions, mutual fighting and raiding each other. So they established their kingdoms, their dynasties, and that's why they're called the 5 dynasties and in the north and the 10 kingdoms in the south. So this is a period. The 5 dynasties and 10 kingdoms, it's a transitional period between the Tang dynasty and the Song dynasty. So pretty soon somebody would come and, you know, wipe them out and unify China as it has been, you know, throughout history the case, when there would be a division. And Chinese, you know, ever since, they do not like to be divided. They do not want confusion. They don't want chaos. They would rather like to have a strong government, a strong emperor, and a strong system to bring them together and give them peace and prosperity. And so they don't bother about, you know, who in fact even ruled. Of course, they would love to be ruled by the Chinese themselves, the Chinese, their own people. But if somebody came from outside, like the Mongols that we will see later on, they would say, yes, that's good. You know, at least they stopped the bloodshed after, you know, they killed so many people, the Mongols themselves. But they created peace, prosperity, stability. And so that's why the Chinese always, they loved stability and preferred stability over chaos and confusion. So that's what happened to these kingdoms and dynasties that came into being in the transitional period between the Tang dynasty and the Song dynasty. And let's see what happened to them. All right. The period between 907 to 960, that's the Jiedushi rule in China, the transitional period in China, where, as I said, you know, they maintained armies and collected taxes because they established their own dynasties and kingdoms. They ruled at the, of course, they ruled at the expense of the emperor's central authority, which means that they would not pay any attention to the orders or to the commands of this king, the emperor, and they were supposed to send these taxes, you know, to the emperor, his treasury. Rather than sending these taxes to the emperor, they would keep them in their pockets and maintain their armies. So that became a threat to the central authority of the emperor, which meant China was being divided. They would fight among themselves, of course, and that also would, you know, keep Chinese being killed. So that, and the bloodshed would continue. So from about 907 to 960, this type of a transitional chaos and confusion went on. This An Lushan, one Jiedushi ruler, I just brought him to show you an example of this person. This is the person, if you might remember from the previous session, he in fact was responsible for finishing the Tang dynasty because he killed a lot of people. He came from the north. He was Sino-side. I mean, he was part and parcel of the Chinese. He learned Chinese. He could pass for a Chinese person. And so because of his problems with the Tang Dynasty, he invaded the Tang Dynasty and killed, a lot of people. And so the trouble that he created for China, the post-Tang China, as you might have noticed, a lot of people lost their lives. In close to about, according to one account, close to about 35 million people lost lives because of the confusion, because of the chaos, because of the fighting, and because of, this early burly chaotic situation. So that the Chinese never preferred. They would prefer someone to come, and take over and unify China and give China peace and prosperity. So let's see further. So I just wanted to show you one, example on Lushan. Okay. The Northern Song Dynasty, let's see how that got established. The Song Dynasty rule, it's divided into two sections, as I said, or two phases. The Northern Song that reigned from 960 to 1127, and we call them, or the historian called them, the Northern Song because their capital was in the north. That is northern part of China at a place called Kaifeng, and it was on the Yellow River, which is, the character of the northern region in China. So located at the Yellow River, Kaifeng, the capital, because of that location, the whole dynasty was called the Northern Song Dynasty. Then the other one, the Southern Song Dynasty, from about 1127 to 1279. The Southern Song Dynasty ruled, and it's called the Southern Song because of the location of their capital at Hangzhou on the Yangtze River. So that's closer to the Yangtze, and later on we will show you on the map. So because of the location of Hangzhou on Yangtze River, the whole dynasty in history, goes under the title or the name the Southern Song. Okay. The Song, whether northern or southern, they had to face those threats, coming to them from the north, and especially these barbarian people, as the Chinese used to call them, the Khitan people, the Jurchin people of Manchuria, and the Tangut in the western Turco-Mongol people, and then the Mongol themselves. The Mongols like Kublai Khan or Genghis Khan, these Mongol people, don't confuse them with me with my last name. So that's how, you would see these northern barbarian invasions, in fact, would finish the Song Dynasty. So keep that in mind, that anytime the barbarian would come, the dynasty would suffer. And the more they invade, the lesser the chances of the dynasty to continue in power. So that would happen also to the Song Dynasty. Let's see further. One person, he used to be the military commander, of the northern Zhou people. And he also had sort of experience in the Tang army. So, he was much more experienced person, and coming from the Zhou family, he was the commander of the Zhou emperor, and his duty was to protect the emperor from barbarians or whoever, might harm him. This was the Huizong emperor, who did not, rule for long, but still, he was an emperor, and he was a boy, a young man. And so this commander of the Zhou emperor, Zhao Kuang-yin, that would be the pronunciation, Kuang-yin. And almost all these emperors of the Song Dynasty, they refer to them as coming from the family of Zhao. So he took over, and he replaced or removed the king, the boy, and himself, he seized power in a palace revolution in 960, and he removed the boy king, and himself, became the emperor, and he founded his own dynasty to be known as the Song Dynasty. All right. This Song he proclaimed himself as Emperor Taizu, and so he is the founder of the Song Dynasty, or the Northern Song Dynasty. So keep him in mind, Emperor Taizu, who used to be a military commander and a god or, of the palace. He seized power, brought himself into power, proclaimed himself as Emperor Taizu, and established or founded the Song dynasty. So he would be the first Song emperor, Emperor Taizu. There he is, the first Song emperor. All right, let's see what he did. He captured entire North China, that for sure. And he ruled from the capital Kaifeng. That's where he established his capital, at Kaifeng. He removed the corrupt officials that he believed, had created problem for the previous dynasty or for the king. And so he removed them, and most probably some of them, they did not like him. So that's why he felt that they would be threat to him. So he removed them. He increased agricultural growth. That was good for the people, the common people. He redistributed the lands that he took it from the previous dynasty and the officials, the corrupt officials that he thought they were corrupt. So he took lands from the powerful people and redistributed them among the peasants. So that increased agriculture, and that made people a bit happy. He, also known for digging more canals, which was good for irrigation and good for agriculture. He also lowered taxes on the peasants, which of course, everybody loves it. So Emperor Taizu started on the right foot and did all the right things by removing the corrupt officials, by helping the poor people, and that is what agriculture, was booming. So anytime a king would come, and especially in the dynastic cycle, the first king would do all the right things because he had learned from the mistakes of the previous dynasty. He had been watching, what was going on in the previous dynasty, how the previous dynasty lost the power. So hopefully he would not repeat the same mistakes, but that's only him. Down the road, his grandson or the grandsons of his grandson, they would repeat the same old mistakes, and that's how, the dynasty that he's worked so hard to establish it, would go down the drain because of the mistakes of the future generation. So that's how history repeats itself again and again, not only in China, but in a lot more countries. Let's see further. This is almost entire China. This is the northern section because this is the Yellow River right here. This is northern, and this is southern because that is the Yangtze River. And so he brought almost entire China under his control, Emperor Taizu, and that is his capital, Kaifeng. Now keep in mind also that this area, the most dangerous area, because here are quite a few Mongols. This is the West Xia people, Turkic-Mongol. Another, the Liao people, they made their own empire right here. Another very, tough people. And some of them, they would come and finish, the northern Song dynasty, and then later on the southern Song dynasty. So keep an eye on the Mongols and the Turks and their mixture in the north. And these northern barbarians, these people would always refer by the Chinese, they would be always referred to them as barbarians. So whenever Chinese say barbarian, that means non-Chinese. They could be later on, in 18th century, even the European, they would refer to them barbarians because the Europeans invaded China. Okay, let's see. Emperor Taizu. He selected capable bureaucrats, and in tough civil service exams, he tightened the civil service exam. Nobody could cheat, nobody could do anything, and so he would, supervise the exam himself. So that's how he tightened the civil service exam, added to the curriculum. Also, he was a much more practical type of a person in the selection of the bureaucrats. The criteria that for selection that he thought was the best criteria, that merit. A person with talent should be brought. A person who had real knowledge, he should be brought into the position, not because somebody was born in a noble family. So merit, not birth and nobility, became the criteria for selection. This also reflected Taizu's own family status. You should know that Taizu, he came from like a peasant family. Although he was a great commander, and the most trusted one because he was in charge to guard the king himself. but his family belonged to a lower middle class family. He did not come from a big royal family or noble family, so that is why the changes that he made reflected Taizu's own family status. He also adopted Confucian integrity. Most probably he wanted to appease people, keep people happy, but at the same time he wanted to keep the Confucian scholars, the Confucian bureaucrats happy with him, although they would create problems later on for some of his members of the family. Taizu also added social responsibility, as they say, to Tang material prosperity. He believed that during the Tang dynasty there was a lot of peace and prosperity, material development, and that led to sort of a moral corruption. So he would love to have all that material development in his dynasty and during his reign, but he wanted people to be responsible people. They should fulfill their duties. They should not get so much involved in the fun, that they were doing. And so he wanted to make these officials, especially of the kingdom, responsible people. And that's what it says. He added social responsibility to Tang material prosperity because these people were increasingly becoming spoiled. And he did not like that. He continued Tang industrial production of silk and porcelain. This is not like a complete break with the Tang dynasty. He continued. The Tang dynasty did a lot of great things, and he wanted to continue those great things. And one of them was the industrial production of silk and porcelain, because he could do business with other people. He also diminished the powers of the military commanders because he knew a military commander could come with a coup d'etat and topple the dynasty, as he had done himself. He was a military commander, remember? And so he, removed the existing king. So that's why he decrease their military power by taking their land, some, not all, but some of their lands, and giving them to the poor people, so that poor people would be, happy with him. He also tightened the civil service exam so that the Confucian scholars would be happy with him. So he did all the right, things. He moved all the right ways, and that's how he was successful. Let's see further. Taizu also brought trusted family members in high positions, because he really did not trust these corrupt people. So he brought them into civil and military administrations, and there they would watch everybody, because these were very loyal people. His family members, like cousins, brothers, sons, and some of these kings, they had multiple wives and concubines, so they were never in short of, children or family members, and some of them they never had, any son or any legitimate son. Finally, he was replaced by his brother, Zhao Guangyi. Don't confuse with another similar name. This is Zhao Guangyi, not Guangyan, as he was. So Zhao Guangyi, his brother, replaced him, and his brother took the title of Taizong. He was Taizu, and his brother would be known as Emperor Taizong. This could be sometime, very big problem for non-Chinese students, because these names, number one, they're foreign names, let's face it, Chinese, and they could be very similar to each other. That's another problem. So that's why I said in the beginning, do not be so much fixed and fixated with the names of particular emperors. If somebody is important, maybe because that somebody started the dynasty, like in this case Emperor Taizu. So it'd be worthwhile to remember his name, but not all the names, and that's why names are not so important. What they did, that is more important. So keep eyes on the movement of the history, the action, the deeds, and the measure that they adopted. So that'd be more important. So here we have the second, after Taizu, Emperor Taizong, and let's see what he did. All right, Emperor Taizong, the second Song emperor, and he ruled for about more than 20 years. That quite some time for a person to rule, and some of them they did more than that. So it seems like a successful person, Taizong. He strengthened the Song rule by taking care of the people. He followed, his brother's policies to some extent. So he took care of the people. He turned more Confucian. That was, in one way, it showed the more he was Confucian, or the more he showed that he was a Confucian person, that meant that he took care of the people, and the Confucian scholars, powerful, officials would be happy with him. He also did a big mistake. In a way, he unsuccessfully invaded the Liao people of Manchuria. These are, Mongol people, the Liao people, and they were living in Manchuria. They had their own dynasty and sort of their rival empire up in north, and so they could become problem, and so he invaded them, and boy, that was not good, because he attracted the Manchurian people against himself. So he was replaced by his son, Zhao Hing. And that Zhao Hing, that was his, family. Hing was his first name. So he became and known as Emperor Zhenzong. Let's see what Emperor Zhenzong did. Zhenzong, the third Song emperor, and he increased production of quality porcelain and on industrial level. Here is one king who believed that there was already enough food and all that stuff, especially in the south. Now he wanted to focus more on the industries, and of course for commerce and trade. So all these great Song leaders, they had all the great ideas, and they were working on it. So he increased, he wanted to be much more commercial, much more industrial, and much more doing trade and business, even though business and trade and commerce, this is, I should say right here, in the beginning, I should tell you that business and business community, merchants and traders, believe it or not, they were disliked and sometimes despised by the common Chinese people, because Chinese culture is very Confucian, and in Confucianism, merchants and traders were treated as parasites because they took advantage of the needs of the people. So they would buy with low prices and sell with high prices the same commodity, which is the first law of business. You buy low and you sell it high. So, but for that, just for that reason, Confucius, who a great scholar who lived 500 years before Christ, and ever since, the Chinese people, they looked down upon the business community and merchants and traders. It's hard to believe that everybody in China wants to do business and trade with the United States, with outside, world, with Europe. And China, the one that now we know, rising China, it's rising because of this great global international trade and business that China is doing with everybody. So, but keep in mind, China was, being very Confucius, very anti-business, anti-merchants, but very pro-agriculture and pro-peasant people. So because of that, it was wonderful. I mean, despite of that, it was wonderful on part of Emperor Zhenzong to go for commerce and go for trade and industry and sell things in the rest of the world. Let's see further. So he not only increased the industrial production, he also introduced on a massive scale rice cultivation in northern China. As you might remember, northern China was a place for wheat, not for rice. Rice was a plant or food or crop that was meant for south, because the southern people in the south much more, having a lot of water, good tropical, condition, one could grow more and more rice. But he now wanted rice to be grown in north, and that was good policy. So rice in the south and rice in the north, so he doubled almost, the food production, which was good for the common people. And that, because of that, you have a lot of economic prosperity, in Song dynasty by his time. And this is despite the fact that barbarians were threatening, northern China, and especially northern Song, China. And so this prosperity continued amid threats from barbarians. Let's see further. He also increased the power of the military, most probably because he understood the threat now that becoming more and more, visible from the barbarians in the north. So he wanted to, strengthen the army to stand up to barbarian invasion, and the trouble was, nobody could stand against them. By 1005, he got into trouble with the Liao people, and so they invaded China, the Song dynasty areas in northern China, and then, unfortunately, he was defeated. He was defeated, and he had to sign a very humiliating peace treaty with the Liao of the Khitan Empire. This term Khitan, 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 it's an important term because it is from this word that we get the English word Cathay. Cathay is an ancient term for China. So that's why, remember this Khitan as a term. It is from this term that we get the old name of China as Cathay. And also, till this day, in Russian language, because the Russians were closer, to northern China, in Russian language, till this day, China is called Kitai. Because I did 4 years, Russian language, I know it. So it's still, they refer to it as Kitai, and some people in the ancient, if they want to use the ancient terms, they refer to China as Cathay, and there is, in fact, at the danger of advertising it, there is a Pacific Cathay, airline that is run by the Chinese. So if you wonder where this Cathay thing comes from, and the European also used it for China for some time. So this comes from this term Cathay, Khitan, and the Arabs also call them Khitan, and this is because these were very powerful people, even if the vast majority of them were barbarians, northern people, not really Han Chinese, but still because they were so powerful, people referred to the whole area, northern China, as Cathay. Let's go further. He, after signing this humiliating peace with the Khitan people, the Liao people, he had to pay them bribes in silver and silk to appease these Khitan allies, who now, allies in the sense that he had signed a peace treaty, and of course they never cared for the treaties, and soon they would turn against, the Song dynasty, and they would end the Song dynasty, in fact, the northern Song dynasty. All right, let's see further. He became a Taoist and a fatalist. Taoist means a pacifist person, in which that's the philosophy, Taoism, the philosophy of non-action. Don't do anything and things would take care of itself. And fatalist means that whatever happens to you, you don't do anything about it, and you just say, this was in my fate, this was in my destiny, so it happened to me. So that is what's called fatalist, a person who goes by his fate or her fate. He was threatened, his empire was threatened by the Western Xia people, another Mongol group mixed with the Turkish people in the West, Western China, I mean. Of course, he could not fight on all these fronts. The Liao people in the northeast, and now, the Xia people in the west. He could not fight on all these fronts, but he had to, do something about it and pay very good salaries to the military and take care of the army, weapons, arms, etc. So he had to increase taxes on the peasants to appease the barbarians, pay the barbarians, pay his army, and of course nobody likes that. So he was replaced by his son Zhao-Jin. And let's see, Zhao-Jin, he proclaimed himself as the emperor by the name Ren-Jing. Okay, let's see what Ren-Jing did. The fourth Song emperor, Zhenzong, and he reversed his father's Taoist policies of pacifism or fatalism or Taoism. He wanted to be very assertive, so he further strengthened the military. He gave them more money, more horses, more weapons, to stand up to the barbarians, which, did not work. He continued bribing the barbarians to keep them happy and stop them from invading the people. However, the peasants, they revolted again and again, and because of the heavy taxes that the Song dynasty had imposed lately on the peasants. Although the Song dynasty would love to work like a Confucian dynasty and keep the people happy, but it happens in every state and every historical period. When your state is being invaded by someone, by outsiders, definitely the people inside the country, they would have to have, render some sacrifices. So more taxes for the army, more money that we need for the army. So people have to be taxed. People do lose their freedoms sometimes. They do lose their financial, advantages that they might have been enjoying previously. So that's what was going on here also with Zhenzong, administration or kingdom, that he imposed more taxes and people revolted against him. Let's see further. These internal revolts encouraged foreign barbarian invasions, and sometimes they would go hand in hand, because the barbarians, they came to know that the empire was in trouble, so that would have been the best time for them to hit and invade China. He died without an heir. However, he had already appointed his cousin Gaozong to rule the country. So he still kept the rule in his dynasty, and Gaozong he became Emperor Huizong. Huizong, the fifth Song emperor, could not rule for long, just only 3 years. He was succeeded by his son Jiaozu, and Jiaozu, he adopted the title, the imperial title of Zhenzong. Let's see, Zhenzong, he ruled for quite some time, for about 20 years or 21 years. Okay, the sixth Song emperor, Zhenzong. Zhenzong, he brought a wonderful person, a great scholar by the name Wang Anshi, to become his chancellor or prime minister or state economist. So that's how he wanted to have this Wang Anshi, a great noted scholar of course Confucianism, but more than that, he was a very practical person. He was a great economist. So the emperor brought Anshi to do something about the problem that the kingdom was facing and suffering from. So he brought Wang Anshi into chancellorship and turned him like a sort of a state economist. So let's see what he did. Wang Anshi. Wang Anshi, he created sort of a social welfare system for the country, in which he gave pensions, money to old people, that is help to old people. He also provided loans to the peasants, for the peasants to go and buy farm implements and do agriculture activity. He also controlled wages and prices. Nobody would charge more labor wages, and nobody would charge more prices for the product. So that was good, and it worked. However, a lot of people did not like him. He also reformed the exam system, and for that reason, this reforming the exam system, Confucian scholars, the very conservative people did not like him, because they believed that that was a sort of a state interference, and he didn't know much about the exam system, why he would reform. But he had his own view of the exam system. He believed that any person who was going to be appointed in the state bureaucracy, it should not be on the basis of like how much he knew about history or how much he knew about Confucian writings or poetry or literature. These people should have like real skills. How much a person knew about irrigation, how much a person knew about agricultural skills or the market economy, and how much he knew about the geography of China. These were the practical skills or knowledges that were needed to have a good kingdom and peace and prosperity. So that's why he insisted on hiring only, being a chancellor, he insisted on hiring only those people who had practical knowledge, how to make a road, how to grow more food, how to bring more water in irrigation, to dry places and bring them under cultivation. So the Confucian scholars who had spent, their whole life in reading books and books and books and writing books, he didn't have any stomach for those things. He wanted practical, skilled people, and that's how he got into trouble with Confucian scholars. Let's see further. No matter what any king could do, these Western Xia people, they invaded. This was a group of Mongols, Turkic Mongols by the name Tangut. They invaded the empire, and Zhenzong, his army was defeated. So he had his own problems with the barbarians. So he bribed them, but in vain. Bribes would not work anymore, and these people, really the barbarians, wanted to take over China. So that's how he was in trouble. Also, he was opposed by Confucian scholars because of Wang Anshi, as I said. They did not like him, his interference in the exam system, and he kicked out of business most of these Confucian scholars that he believed they did not know much, but they were filling those positions and getting big salaries. So that's why the Confucian scholars, especially the most conservative people, they did not like his innovation and new ways of doing things. So Emperor Zhenzong, he was succeeded by his son Jiaozu, who took the title of Huizong, Emperor Huizong. And that would be Emperor Huizong, the 7th Song emperor, and ruled quite for some time. Huizong, he replaced Chancellor Wang Anshi with Minister Sima Guang. Now, this is Wang Anshi, and this one is Sima Guang. Now, something about Sima Guang, as Anshi was a great, economist, a sociologist, a great fixer of the problems, a great troubleshooter. Equally, Sima Guang was a great scholar, and he had written, Sima Guang had written a lot of books on the history of China. And so he had his own knowledge, about the history of China. Most probably we would not have known anything about the ancient history of China had it not been for Sima Guang. He wrote volumes and gave it to, presented to Emperor Huizong, and he couldn't believe it. And this is a, the volumes, they talk about history from about like 1500 years before Christ. And most of this stuff, of course, he didn't have any documents for them. Most of this history was coming from generation to generation through oral or memory, memory history or oral history. And so he put them together now in books, and that is the greatest contribution that he rendered to the history of China and to the civilization of China. And of course, for that he was, rightfully rewarded by Jiedushi when he removed, the previous chancellor and gave all that power to Sima Guang. And let's see what happened. Well, Sima Guang really did not do much, just reversed the previous policies of the chancellor Wang Anshi, but failed, miserably failed. But he was still acceptable to Confucian scholars. Let's see further. Huizong, he stopped giving bribes or tributes to the barbarians, most probably because of Sima Guang. We should fight, this and that type of stuff. But it did not work. Huizong died childless. He didn't have a child, but he was succeeded by a younger brother, Zhaoji. And Zhaoji, he ruled as Emperor Huizong. Let's see, Emperor Huizong, the 8th Song emperor. And let's see what he did. He was a Taoist. He turned to Taoism, but unfortunately also he turned against the Buddhists. Most probably he was still a Confucian person, but he turned against the Buddhist. One thing why any emperor would turn against Buddhism, even being a Taoist, that would be the reason would be because these Buddhist monks, because they had come from northwest, they had Buddhism had come to China from India, modern day Pakistan, Afghanistan, through Central Asia, and then through the barbarians it had reached to the Chinese. Most probably because Buddhists, they wanted to live, they wanted to work with both the Chinese and the non-Chinese. They wanted to spread their ideology. They wanted to spread their philosophy or religion. So just as they had spread their religion among the Han people, the Chinese people, they also wanted to reach out to the barbarians and to bring them under Buddhism. That could have worked, and worked even for both, like bringing these two group of people, the Chinese and the non-Chinese, under one philosophy, and that would have given them sort of a religious unity. But at the same time, these Buddhists were looked upon by some Chinese emperor as the stooges or the agents or the spies of the barbarian people, and that's why he turned against Buddhism. This would be something like, later on we would see Japanese, leaders, they turned against Christianity because they believed that Japanese Christians were spies of Europeans who were invading, Japan, or they were, becoming problem for Japan. So some of these Christians, Japanese Christians, boy, they were, massacred in hundreds and thousands of numbers. So this is not the first time nor the last time, and that's unfortunately when some kings or kingdoms or countries, they looked upon their own people as spies for another nation. This also reminds me, during Second World War, huge big numbers of American Japanese were rounded up and sent to these camps in one place, another place on mainland. This is what happened to quite a few Jewish people not too long ago who living in Iran, and the Iranian regime believed that they are spying for Israel, and so they were jailed and tried. So that's what most probably happened to Buddhists. Why a Taoist person, a peaceful person, would turn against Buddhism, and that's what happened to Huizong. Let's see further. Huizong is also known for being a great artist, musician, and for that reason he ignored army, and he would pay for that. Made alliances with the Jurchin people, who had their own Jin empire, against the Liao Khitan empire. Now what he was doing, he was biding time, and he was making one Mongol people to invade another Mongol people, divide them, and then rule them, that type of a thing. But unfortunately did not work. He lost wars against former ally, the Jin people, the Jurchin people, who laid siege to his capital, Kaifeng. So his former allies, they now invaded him because these allies, they took care of the Liao people, the Khitan people, not for the rest of their life, but still these allies, they turned against him and they invaded even his capital, Kaifeng. And so that tells you how powerful the Jurchin people were. Let's see what happened. Jurchin people, and write them both, Jurchin, these were the group of people, and the Jin, that was their empire or the state or the dynasty that they had established in the north. They brought a lot of forces, but they could not scale the walls of Kaifeng. Very powerful, very strong built walls, and so they could not scale the walls of the city capital, Kaifeng. They went back, but they would come back. And they got a lot of money. Emperor Huizong had to pay them heavy indemnities to the Jin people, to the Jurchin people, who returned to the north, but they would come back. When they invaded the first time and reached to the walls of the city Kaifeng, the capital, there Emperor Huizong, he turned into some nervous breakdown. And so hurriedly, the people surrounding him, they replaced him by his son, Zhao Huan, who took the title of Zhenzong, not Q, but CH, okay, Zhenzong. So he would be known as Emperor Zhenzong, the Zhao Huan. So that's how, the father, he lost his nerves because of the invasion of the Jurchin people, and he was very worried, so his son saved the situation for a while, so he succeeded him. And let's see what Emperor Zhenzong did now that he was in the hot seat of emperorship. Let's see further. Emperor Zhenzong just ruled only for 1 year, the 9th and the last emperor of the northern Song, because nobody could stand up to those barbarians. And so that's what happened to him. Could not rule, just one last year, and then he was out the first year, 9th and the last emperor of the northern Song. Let's see. He changed army generals, most probably to save the dynasty. He offered peaceful negotiation to the Jurchin people, the Jin dynasty, who rejected his offers, because the Jurchin people, they wanted to take, the city and the kingdom. So in 1127, they invaded, and he watched very helplessly as the Jurchin people, they scaled the mighty walls of Kaifeng. But that was a very emotional thing, not only for him, but for other military journals, the scholars, the people living there in the city, and nobody could do anything about it. And so it was a very emotional time for him when in 1127, the Jurchin people, they finally, came and they scaled the walls and finish, they scaled the walls and conquered the city. And inside the city, the Jurchin people, they seized the emperor, Zhenzong. They also seized his father, the previous emperor, Huizong, and they also seized some members of the royal family. Thank goodness some escaped, but most of them were seized. So the Jurchin people, they seized the royal family, even the existing emperor and his father, previous emperor, Zhenzong, as well as Huizong. And there, the Jurchin barbarians, they carried out a massacre in the city and massacred the Kaifeng capital city population. All right, this was the fall of Kaifeng. And with the fall of the capital city of Kaifeng to the Jurchin barbarians, that ended the northern Song dynasty. The emperor and the rest of his entourage, they were, exiled to Manchuria, and there he died at the age of 60 or 61. He was succeeded by a half-brother, Zhao Guo, and this was, his half-brother was the one who had escaped along with other people from the city when it was being invaded or scaled by the Jurchin people. So he ruled as Emperor Gaozong. And Emperor Gaozong, he would be the first emperor of southern Song dynasty. It's still the same dynasty, the Song dynasty, but from now onward, from the days of Gaozong, from about 1127 onward, this would be referred to as the southern Song dynasty. All right. He escaped, as I said, the Jurchin siege of Kaifeng with the help of very loyal supporters, Song supporters, most probably army people. They saved him, and he moved the capital to Hangzhou because, of course, north was mostly taken by the Jurchin people, and this Hangzhou, it's also referred to as Lin'an in the previous, textbooks or in the old name. So it was located on the southern end of the Grand Canal on the Yangtze River. So because of that, it's called the Southern Song Dynasty. So he started, Gaozong, although he is the 10th emperor of the Song Dynasty, but the first emperor of the Southern Song Dynasty. And he gathered big army for the defense of his Southern Song Dynasty and for the south or whatever was left, and that is the old Kaifeng. the old northern China, northern Song China, which now the Jurchin people who invaded right here from this area, they invaded the north and took it over. And so he moved the capital to a place right here. And there is Hangzhou, which, as I said, is also referred to as Lin'an. So this was the previous area of the northern Song, and this would be now known as the southern Song China. So this was taken by the barbarians, and now the Chinese, the southern Song Chinese, would be ruling it. So with that type of a shift from the north to the south, what you would see would be a lot of changes in politics, because the kings that would come to rule southern Song, they would be for a few days, and even if they lasted for a long time, some of them like more than 30 years, 40 years, they stayed in power, but mostly they would stay in power, and praying that the barbarians would not invade again. And even if they did, they would pay them something, to make them go away, which would make them to come back. And so that's how, the cat and mouse thing, or this exchange of gifts and bribes would work for some time, and then again the barbarian would come and wipe out even the southern Song dynasty. So this is what you would see in the next section of the southern Song dynasty. Let's see. So Emperor Gaozong, the first southern Song emperor, he stopped the Jurchin invasion for some time, and with good defenses and paying them more and more bribes. He turned Taoist and pacifist, and some people believe he should have been, as he was a militaristic type of a person. How come he now became Taoist, pacifist? Pacifist, a person like who believes that even if somebody invades you, you don't do anything, just sit and wait, and they will go away. That type of a pacifism, not returning violence. That's pacifism. Now, why he would do that? There are theories, because remember his brother Zhenzong, that the barbarians took him as with them to Manchuria as their hostage. These Jurchin people could also threaten him. We are going to release Emperor Zhenzong, who of course he was the emperor, and he would come and take over the kingdom, the dynasty from you, so you have to pay us more. And that's how, when he converted to Taoism, he did not have to fight. That was the whole thing. He didn't have to fight. His army officer could not expect him to give him the command to fight, and that's the reason he turned to Taoism. It was for the reason to stop his brother coming to the throne, because now he could pay as much as he wanted to the barbarians and keep safety and the protection of the empire. So that's how he turned to Taoism with a purpose, not because he was a very sincere person to Taoism. So that's the reason. Some people dispute that. No, he genuinely became Taoist. Even if his brother wanted to come, he would have given him the throne. So there are these two views. You should know that. Okay, let's see further how Gaozong, what he did. Well, he abdicated after ruling for 35 years. He died at the age of 80. That's long time. Maybe either his pacifism worked, his Taoism worked, his tricks worked, whatever you call it, or peaceful negotiations and bribing of the barbarians worked. Since he didn't have a child of himself, he searched for and found a surviving Song relative. This Song relative, he was a boy, and he had escaped along with Gaozong, escaped from the Jurchin invasion. And so they finally found someone who belonged to the Song dynasty. He recognized him and appointed him as the emperor, the next emperor after him. So he was succeeded by Jurchin, the person that they found. And that Jurchin, he adopted the title of Huizong. And so you would see this now, from now onward, the replacement of one emperor by another in a very rapid succession. And even if it took some time, still you would see that things were not really working for the Song dynasty, even if somebody ruled like Zhenzong for about 35 years. He ruled, but they were all going down to the end of their time because the Mongols were coming and invading and taking over the whole of China, which we'll see in another session, the next session. So let's see what happened to Gaozong. Okay. Xiaozong. All right. Here he is, Xiaozong, the second ruler. And now we're going to go into quick succession, replaced by Gaozong. Okay. He ruled for quite some time, but still waiting for the enemies to come and take over. Then Ningzong, again, ruled for quite some time. Emperor Huizong. Okay, that's quite some time that he ruled, for about 40 years he ruled. Thanks to the barbarians who did not invade, or if they did, he paid them. Emperor Duzong, also for quite some time, to be followed by Emperor Gongdi, only 2 years. Gongdi, he was a very unfortunate boy. Well, all of these were very unfortunate because they were, facing the northern barbarians, and nobody could do. They had a big challenge. When the people, the Mongols, they invaded China, they seized him, and they took him, with them, and they would not kill him, and they wanted him to live on, and later on, maybe whatever would happen, they would see. That was the Mongol view, to keep him, maybe use him also against the existing king later on. So they took him and they raised him. When he became like a really adult man and thinking and all that stuff, he was just about the age of maybe even 20 or older. Somebody heard him that he was living in exile among the barbarians all these years, and he would love to go back and revive the great old Song dynasty that his forefathers once upon a time had been ruling. What a great dynasty it was, and which meant that was to be the future threat to the Mongols, and so they killed him. They overheard him. He's still dreaming of becoming a king, and the Mongols could not afford to have another king in China, so they said, here is one, let's kill him first, and that's how he lost his life, just by dreaming aloud, to become again the king of China. Gongdi ruled for 2 years. He was followed by a brother who ruled, Duanzong, who ruled for just 2 years, to be followed by the last emperor, Emperor Bing, who ruled only for 1 year. He was also a boy, basically, Emperor Bing. He was a boy, and he was in the protection of a great military commander who guarded him, from birth. He was just a few years old boy. And so the commander and everybody knew that the Mongols, especially now under the great leadership of Kublai Khan, and as I said, don't confuse him with me. We share the same last name, but no, we don't share the ethnicity or the race, two different ethnic groups. Kublai Khan, when he invaded, he wanted to seize the boy, the emperor, and this military commander who was guarding the emperor, he would not let him touch the boy, the emperor, and so he took him to the safety of a place which was a cliff. So as the forces of Kublai Khan, coming nearer and nearer to seize the boy, and the commander challenged Kublai Khan army, I would never let you touch him, and you would never touch him. And so as they came closer, he jumped off the cliff with the boy in his hands, and they both died. So it's sort of, he killed the boy by protecting him from the Mongols. Who knows, if he had let the boy, he had given him to the Mongols, they might have, let him live. But that's what happened to Emperor being the last emperor of the southern Song dynasty. And with him, the Song dynasty came to an end. Let's see further what was this dynasty about the Song culture. We talk nothing but wars and problems, but the Song culture, it had a great commercial revolution, growth of cities and trade, a lot of business, a lot of industries, and the use of copper and silver money. And so all of these great things were happening. And so the population increase about, to 100 million population. You might remember just, a few generations back, so many of them had died, in millions. And now, there was a great population increase amidst all these problems. Better quality rice was being produced now in China, and that was good. More production, more food, more good nutrition food. Luxury goods now becoming like common household items: silk, porcelain, lacquerware, medicinal herbs, and most of these things that were produced in China, they were taken outside and sold. So much and more now you see trade and business going on between people. Also, the Chinese took over the coastal trade with Southeast Asia from foreign merchants. Till this time, by the end of the Song dynasty, or closer to the Song dynasty, the trade was in the hands of the outsiders. And that the one reason for that was, in a Confucian culture as the Song was, they did not encourage, trade and business with the outside world. So if they were doing business inside, that's fine, but not outside. But now they realize that, yes, money, power is in trade and business if you do it with the rest of the world. If you go global, you would get more for your products. And that's what they were doing. But the Chinese foreign trade, Chinese items were sold outside by outsiders, not by the Chinese. And these outsiders were Koreans, let's see. Koreans, these were Arabs, these were Persians, and so they would come to China and take Chinese item and sell it outside. And that's how, by the end of the Song dynasty or during the Song dynasty, Chinese themselves would take their items and go out and do business. Commerce became primary source for the state revenues. So they became source for the state revenues because more money, the Chinese, they had more money in commerce and business. So that was good, for the state to tax them and get more money out of business. So that's how commerce became, a major source for the state revenue. Agriculture was there, but this was the greatest thing for China to happen. And so the state would tax domestic and foreign or international trade that people were engaged in now more than ever, and that's how the state got more money. As merchants got more money, the state also got more money. Okay, emperors became richer and more autocratic. That could be one reason, for the Song dynasty to lose, the dynasty, for the Song kings to lose dynasty. They became rich. They could pay more, the barbarians, but the barbarians, they wanted China. And so that did not work. The rise of the merchant class during the Song dynasty, also a major class which never existed, but now it was very assertive, major power in the country. They enjoyed the great wealth that they had gained, great wealth, and so they paid taxes to the state, and the state also got rich, from this wealth that the merchants created doing business not only inside China but also outside China. But the Song emperors, while they were engaged with the barbarians, still they made sure that industrial production would go on. Also, the Song dynasty, even from the Tang times, now more than ever you see high literacy rate in the country. More schools were opened, more books were printed, more printing shops were opened, and so more and more people were becoming educated, which is also great, for any country, any state, any power. And at the same time, foreign traveling was increasing, and that's a wonderful thing for something to happen like that, because more Chinese were leaving China with Chinese products, of course. And the more they went outside, the more they got knowledge about the rest of the world. And so that's how it was good for the people. It was good for the state that Chinese would go outside, live outside, bring information about the rest of the world. And so this set the Chinese to go to look forward and move on, with their lives, and not just only in China, but do business with other people, other nations. This later on, maybe in History 242 or in your own classes in world history, you might come to this controversy, and very close to this period. And the controversy is that one Chinese Navy commander, he took a huge, big, hundreds of ships, a great flotilla from China, and he went from China to modern-day Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia, and from there to south of India, and from there to Saudi Arabia, modern-day Saudi Arabia. And there, this commander, he was a Muslim, so there he performed the pilgrimage, the Hajj. And from there he went to South Africa, and believe it or not, there is a British scholar who thinks that from South Africa he went to South America, and that was in 1422. And so that's why Chinese were the first, before Columbus, to get to America. It's still debated, but that's how people think. Some scholars believe that yes, Chinese possible. So this is the beginning of the Chinese to go out. I think we had enough today. Let's see what we have in conclusion. We talked about the rise of the Northern Song Dynasty, how they unified China and how China, got prosperity. Then the barbarian invasion, the old problem, and the killing the Northern Song Dynasty, and then the start of the Southern Song rule continued even amid barbarian invasions, and the Song culture, continued. And I would thank you very much for tuning in, and aloha.